All right, hey everyone, welcome back. It is another Coffee Talk, another podcast with myself and David Perzin. David, I am not going to ask you how your week has been because last week you told me not to.
Dan, I was so looking forward to it. I had some quick, witty responses all prepared. I watched you when you started to queue up this podcast, and it said like three, two, one starting, and I was ready and raring to go. But you know what? I think you've made a good decision, my friend. But can
All
I
right.
ask you one quick question on that
Yeah,
note? Dan, how has your week been?
it hasn't been too bad. Laura's been away this weekend. Laura is up in Hartford working the regionals that's up there. As we're filming, she's driving back, but it's like a 10-hour drive back from Hartford. So she's been up there getting some boxes, getting some new promos. She'll be back in a few hours.
Dan, is this whole 10-hour drive thing related to this constant theme of our podcast that you guys don't have the money for her to just get on a darn plane? I mean, what is going on, Dan? Can you explain it to me?
Well, the drive is because there's four people from our area driving up. So if it was just her driving, then yeah, the plane would probably be better. But when there's four of them splitting gas and splitting hotels and stuff, it's a lot cheaper to drive up.
You know, you budgeting millennials, we go there again. Congratulations, buddy. You're doing it up right. Really, just take all that money, make sure it's all going into Pokemon cards.
Believe me, it is. There is no money for anything else.
Okay, put away the My Little Pony and the hallowed walls of whatever the heck that series is or franchise. Just start to really focus on the Pokemon. I think you're going to do a great job.
Hey, we're mainly focused on Pokemon. I need an outlet. I need a separate thing sometimes. I will tell you, one of the main reasons I am moving to doing bits and pieces in other card games other than Pokemon is because with other card games, I can actually finish collecting them. Like with Pokemon, I can't even finish sets anymore. I guess with Scarlet
Yes.
Violet, I can finish the set, but when it was like for Evolving Skies, if I go to a dead card game, I can own every single card in that other game for less than an Alt Art Umbreon. So sometimes I just need to jump in and I have a little bit of fun, and it feels like I'm hitting a goal when I do that. And in Pokemon at the moment, I just don't feel like I'm hitting too many goals because of the fact of how expensive the stuff is that I'm missing. So that is the main reason I look at other CCGs at the moment, is just to get that feeling of accomplishment that I'm missing with Pokemon.
Well, congratulations then. I'm glad you know yourself, and I like when you are very willing and able to do you. You do you, Dan. All right,
I
sounds
am
good.
doing me. That is why we are not getting the viewers, because no one wants to see me.
The theme continues. All right, my
Yeah,
friend.
people want me to be doing what everyone else is doing, but I'm doing what I'm doing.
All
All
right,
right,
fair enough.
yeah. Oh, and also one of the dogs escaped. Just as we were about to set up, in terms of how my weekend's gone, I went and let the dogs in and bring them to bed, and there was only one dog in the yard. And the other one, where was he? He was just at the front door waiting to come in. I don't know how
Oh
he keeps
my
getting under that fence. I have
goodness.
put bricks and stuff. Every hole I see in the fence, I put bricks and stuff in front of it. He shouldn't be able to get out, but somehow he always does. But at least he doesn't run away. He just runs around to the front door and sits and waits to be let in.
He sounds like he's perfect for your dog. Yes.
Yeah. Well, he's Sir Elton John, so he's a bit of a diva, as you would expect. He lives up to the name.
Nice.
All right, as always, we will start off with the comments from last week's video. Starting with Peak Dat Chew. This is seriously one of the best Pokemon podcasts out there right now. Love the depth and knowledge and old stories. Thank you both for doing this and keeping it going. And thank you for watching as well. I think Peak Dat Chew comments on quite a few videos. One of our,
Thank goodness. We just need to
yeah.
clone him. We need to clone him over and over and over again.
He also shares it on Instagram too most weeks. So if people are out there enjoying this, remember, it costs nothing and takes almost no effort to just share this on Instagram or whatever. That is the best way to support us and get us out there, is just share this with other people.
Yeah, and I think that anybody that's viewing should understand that with someone my age, what you're really doing is it's no different than in the old days when you would help an elderly person cross the street. What you're doing here is you're just helping an elderly guy, get his message out, get his fun out there before his life is over. And if we end up giving some aid to Dan in that process along the way, let's do that. All right. That's a great theme. Thanks, Dan.
We made it 4 minutes into this episode before we mentioned one of us dying.
Yes.
That's I think we're getting earlier and earlier with that. It seems nearly every podcast, one of us has just confronted our mortality, but we're getting earlier and earlier in the episode.
Dan, mental illness is a real thing.
It
Okay, so
is.
the sooner we can confront it and get it out there in front of our viewers, the better off we're all going to be. It's a collaborative discussion. Exactly, it takes
Yeah.
a village. So we're definitely part of the village. I just hope they don't hang us there one day.
Yeah. I might have to blur that when I actually put that on camera. I do not know if I showed off a lot of personal information on that label.
No, there was nothing there. You're good.
Okay, there we go. All right, we got Battle Gems. Trying to figure out which way to place toilet paper is too stressful. Yeah, that was the discussion we had last week. We said everyone commented about toilet paper, and people came through. Battle Gem said they just put it on the toilet behind them. That's also valid. Fantastic podcast. You guys are best. Love the talks on ethics and greed, which was a lot of last week's episode. I've always loved both your content. It's very much appreciated. Content is so valuable, and it makes no sense why there aren't more people tuning in. I think people just don't know about it. Like I said, keep spreading the word around, and I think we'll get this audience growing. He says, maybe it's a blessing, rebuild that small community once again. It's not quantity that matters, it's quality. And hey, we always will try and be a quality podcast here. But some quantity would be nice because I do need to eat.
Yeah, hashtag algorithm. Okay, move right on, Dan.
All right. Pokey Collectibles said, I am genuinely shocked there are only 53 views considering the quality conversation and knowledge bouncing around. Gents, please keep this going. Like I said, the views will go up. Just keep sharing it around, and we will make sure to keep this going for the foreseeable future.
Until one of us dies. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Until one of us dies. What we could do is, the views are going really low, we can start a betting pool on which of us it's going to be.
Dan, I know the answer to that, and I just don't want you to feel bad. Let's just keep going. Yes.
It is definitely going to be me, isn't it? All right.
Sorry.
I mean, it is. Like, you're older than me, but the age gap isn't, like, ridiculous.
It's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty ridiculous.
Not enough that my terrible health can't offset it.
Okay, fair enough, but I don't have the pill bottle sitting right next to me right here. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, that's the relevant thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's as we were talking about, the mental illness pills. That's what those are. The thing that's going to kill me is that I'd have part of one of my lungs taken out when I was 17. It's my chest that's going to kill me. That's what's going to set me down.
Yes. Anyway. So someday I'll talk about my health difficulties, but we'll move on now. Go ahead.
We'll definitely move on. All right, Lamar is back again. Lamar, another one who comments every week. Thank you. Says, it may be a hard sell, but maybe I can get my wife to watch as the second person, if only for Dave's cheesy stories. Yes, just make sure you watch it and then make your wife watch it on a different device.
I'm wait a minute. I got to just say one thing. I'm shocked that Lamar has a wife. That's what's getting me right now. Like that's like a whole explosion in my head. So look, whatever you did, Lamar, hang on for dear life, but congratulations.
Yeah. Toilet paper definitely has to come from over the top of the roll, not out the backside. Is it okay to be OCD about this? I think so. Yeah, that's the way I do it as well. Toilet paper hanging over the front. Buying graded is a way better idea on the Topps cards. I bought a Technochrome Ninetales loose and it graded a PSA 5, not what I paid for. Yeah, if you are buying those Topps Chrome cards raw, there is a very, very good chance of missing something, especially in the different types of foiling. You know, when you're looking at Pokemon TCG, you're kind of used to the types of foiling, you know what to look for. When there's a lot of different types of foiling in Topps Chrome, you might miss something because you're not used to looking at that kind of foil.
But keep in mind, you can always resubmit it and just keep resubmitting it over and over again. Okay.
Because if you missed it, one of the graders is going to miss it.
Seems plausible to me.
Could happen. Catch 'em All Collectibles is back, saying there's only one correct way for a toilet paper to be on the holder: over the top and down the side away from the wall. Correct, we agree. More easily and accessible that way. And mentions the original patent for a roll of toilet paper features a diagram showing it in this orientation too. I did actually already know that, and I would have brought it up if no one had in the comments. But when they patented toilet paper, that is the way they patented it.
All right, there is no word called patent. It's not even a word, Mr. UK. Let me tell you about this, mate. The word is patent. They patented it. There's no patent. You may want to patent your wall if it gets dirty or scrummy, but this is a patent. All right, go ahead.
Patent. He then came back with another comment to say, I would love to see the data from within that company, meaning TAG or another like AGS, on the repeatability of their measurements. I have a feeling they're not as good as they should be, but I know that PSA, CGC, BGS, etc. are not replicable to a reasonable degree. So I think Dan's saying that he would like to see it if, one of those companies, they put the same card through the machine, through the grading process 2 or 3 times in a row, and see the data of exactly how close those 1,000 point scores are, whether it hits exactly the same every time it goes through.
And you might be surprised to know, my friend, that I actually know that answer because in my research, doing all of that purchasing of that situation, of that collection of Topps Chrome, it is typically within a span of 6/1000s. So if it graded at 966, it's going to come back between 960 and 972. So it's actually, in contrary to what the comment was, actually very accurate because of the nature of the technology being employed.
Okay, that is actually really good. Yeah, 6/1000s is a very, very tight
Yeah,
window.
yeah.
He did also, of course, mention that he knows that it's way more tight than PSA, CGC, etc., which are basically not replicable to any reasonable degree because it's a different person looking at it.
Yeah, it just depends on whether or not the grader had been drinking heavily or just mildly the night before. I understand that.
Yeah. We have NP Pokemon said, great video once again, was not aware of the situation with the trophy card. Just goes to show another example of Rusty's character. Yep, we always say it. Rusty is one of the really good guys in the hobby. We both have a lot of time for Rusty.
Yeah.
And then final comment is from Laura, my wife, once again. She's learned that she needs to comment every episode. Said, first off, David, I love the Tigger shirt that you were wearing last week. Lots of shade here. I'm here for it, except when Dan's throwing it at me, and I guess I do throw a lot of shade at Laura all the time, but a lot of it is justified, and she throws it right back, just not on camera. Toilet paper roll should always go over the top, not around the back. The only exception is if you have a naughty cat, since they can spin the roll forwards, but we don't have a cat. She said she always hated Topps cards. I still remember getting the first packs of them. The comic store near us was out of the TCG, but had a brand new set of Pokemon cards. The square corners, generic art, badly captured stills from the show. Yuck. I don't know why I picked up those Chrome packs, but I'm glad they turned into a vacation for us. I'm also very glad she picked up those Chrome packs. She says, Tag seems like a cool grading company with a great concept. I still don't like the idea of grading everything and the collection taking up so much more space because of the slabs. Definitely true. If we graded everything, this room would be even more full. But the idea of a company using technology is a huge improvement. She also finished saying, I want to comment on David saying that Dan would never know if I cheated on him, but I'm totally baffled. What a weird thing to say. I will say that, yeah, that I will back her up on that, David. That was a really weird comment that you dropped in the middle of last week's episode. But she says, whatever, at least I watch my husband's videos. My love to Steph.
Yeah, I don't think it was that weird a comment because I think that you guys, when you go through these periodic difficulties in the relationship, you actually look at it as if I was talking about the fact that either one or both of you might cheat. And that really wasn't what I was saying. I think you guys have a good relationship I mean, at least from the outside looking in. But I guess what I'm saying is, no, I was referring in correlation with the fact that you, with all of your years of knowledge of Pokemon, obviously still don't know a hill of beans. So I'm just saying, with this relatively new relationship, marriage, the dog's getting out from the fence, whatever, I just thought that if it ever did happen, not that it would, there's no chance in heck you'd ever know. Because sometimes, Dan, we don't know everything, we can't know everything. And by the time that ever were to happen, you're boning up on your experience in the Pokemon hobby anyways. So please don't consider it threatening. I think you guys are perfectly made for one another. You're a wonderful couple. The hobby looks up to you. I look up to you. The dogs look up to you. So yeah, it really wasn't meant to be weird. It was just, I guess I wanted to say, be careful, treasure what you have.
Yeah,
Sometimes a relationship can be almost as important as your Pokemon card collections are
almost.
to each other. Yeah, yeah.
Almost. And it's not that new of a relationship. We have been married for a while. But
Well,
yeah,
are you past the 7-year itch, Dan?
7 years of marriage is this summer. This
Okay, so
September is 7 years of marriage.
all right. So if you can get through maybe Worlds and a couple of months after that, then
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it's a go for you guys. I'm
yeah,
happy.
there we go. All right, well, that's it for the comments for this week, and that went off on a tangent, but let's move on to some actual cards.
I know that this week you're leading, Dan. So you just lead right in,
I am.
okay? We're gonna pick up from last week, and and I'm sitting in my movie theater room, reclining in a chair because I'm tired. But I love when I could
Yeah.
just speak to you and you just speak to me.
Well, so what? I guess what I'm doing is just telling you what you've got then, because the thing you sent me last week, I said at the end of last week, you'd sent me one more photo that we hadn't talked about yet. What you had sent me was a champion stamped Friends in Galar promo. So Friends in Galar is a card from a set, I believe it's from Brilliant Stars or Astral Radiance, and it has the logo printed on it in this promo version of the Professor Program. So people will have seen Professor Program stamped cards or printed cards around before. Normally, they're for things like going to the seminars that they hold at some regionals, or you could buy them on the actual Professor store using the points that you earn by judging tournaments. People who don't know, when professors work these events that they work at, they get a certain amount of points for working the events, and they can spend those in the store on professor exclusive merchandise.
Dan,
Friends
is that something? By the way, just because sometimes you're gonna just ramrod on through, and I got to make sure.
yeah,
So I really don't know what I bought, and I'm so glad you're going to explain it to me. But
yeah.
also, how long has this Professor Stamp store, no, this Professor Store thing been going on, where these professors can go and buy stuff with their points? Is this a recent thing? Has it been going on for 10 years?
No, I think it maybe started around 2014, 2015. I
Okay.
know for it's been down for the past couple of years. I think a little way into the pandemic, after they stopped having the tournaments, they took it down, and I think it was to do like a full revamp of it, and it hasn't gone back up just yet. But I think the plan is to have it back up soon.
And in that store, what are the kinds of things you can get? Is it? I mean, are there cards there as well, or
Yep, so you can get some cards which will have the Professor logo on them. Normally, you
okay?
can buy those in enough quantity that they're not hard to get. But there's those, then you can get, Professor playmats. Like, I think a lot of people will have seen the playmats that have, there's like a Generation 1 mat where it has every Pokemon from Generation 1, and then they did a Generation 2 and Generation 3 ones. There's that kind of stuff in there. There's like Professor exclusive sleeves, deck boxes, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But Friends in Galar is not that. Friends in Galar is for playing in a Professor Cup. So Professor Cup is a tournament that can only be entered if you're a professor, and I think you've had to hit a minimum amount of judging over the past 12 months leading up to the Professor Cup. They used to just have one or two a year. They have a few more now, but they're hosted at regionals, and you have to enter in advance. And obviously, it is only professors that can play in them. They will normally have a TCG event and a VGC event, but the top eight of the tournament will combine players from both, and they do some sort of weird format thing where they play the top eight out. For the TCG event, it's always weird rulings or some other different type of deck building. You don't just sit down, you play a standard game. For a while, it was, uncommons only was it for a few years, and then once they did a tournament where every round had a weird different ruling. So Laura went to one once where one round they sat down and it was like, okay, swap decks and you now play your opponent's deck. One of them was for the whole tournament, you would search out and set which basic Pokemon you wanted to start. So it totally changed how you built your deck. It's interesting that it's not just a normal tournament. But anyway,
But wait,
this
so these are
sorry,
just professors playing.
just professors playing, yeah.
So but they're professors that you could be versing a professor. You could be a VGC professor and be versing a TCG professor.
Only when you get to top eight. If you decide to play the TCG as a VGC professor, then yes, you could. But in the top eight, they would combine some players from the TCG tournament and some players from the VGC tournament. But through the Swiss rounds, they would have them separate. That's how they've been doing them this year, anyway. In
Okay,
previous years, I
so
think they've done them
again, for
separate.
those people like me that aren't that smart, and you want to walk me across the street before my dementia takes effect, you there are not two sets of winners. Then what you're telling me is
No, there's
when you
no
get
two
to
sets of
top
winners.
eight, you're combining them all, so you're going to just come out with one set of winners for that whole kind of tournament.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, okay,
So it used to be in the past that basically the only prize for this would be a trophy, like a Professor Cup trophy. They would also give away things like 3DSs or whatever the console was at the time, but those would just be store bought. They wouldn't have a special design or anything on them. The only exclusive thing would be the actual trophy that says Professor Cup on it.
Got it.
This year, what they've started doing is they've done an exclusive promo card for the event, which this time is Friends and Galar. So they have the regular version, and then the staff version, and top eight and champion. So the champion stamped obviously goes to one person per event, and there are very few of these events during the year. I think over the 12-month period, it's probably going to end up being about 7 or 8 tournaments. It's kind of hard to keep track of, though, honestly, because some of them are happening in different continents, and it's not always easy to keep track of it. But each of those tournaments is going to have one champion card and 8 top 8 cards, plus the player cards, which every player will get. The very first one, I should say, actually, sorry, the first one they ran this season did not have the participation promos. They only had top 8 and champion. Participation promos were added from the second event onwards. And the staff ones, the staff promo is actually only going out to the organizer. So whoever organized the regionals that the Professor Cup is at gets one staff promo. So the staff promos are actually rarer than top 8 when it comes to Friends and Galar, which is a weird one. But either way, what you have added to your collection this week or last week is the champion stamped Friends and Galar. We already had your players promo, and we have your top 8. I actually think I still have them here because we got them from a friend of Laura's. I need to ship them out to you at some point. But you've now added the champion one to your collection as well.
Yeah, so that's so I certainly was very ecstatic about this. I'm not all that aware of some of these other kinds of tournaments that are going on, and that's why I appreciate when you keep me in the loop.
Yeah,
One of the things that are, and I guess that there's a little bit of an unknown around this one, just because we don't, like you said, know exactly how many Professor Cups are going on. But I have two follow-up questions. I have one is, are Professor Cups going on in various locations around the world, so not just in the States?
yeah,
And then my second follow up is, why are these cards not more valuable? So when I say these cards, when I'm talking about like ultra balls and quick balls, and I know these aren't Professor Cup cards, but
yeah.
they're international championships or other kinds of championships through the years. To my knowledge, there seems to be quite a little bit of supply, but yet not much demand. So you see those champion cards, and I can list one out there even for a couple $1,000s at times if I have an extra one.
Yeah.
And really isn't much interest in it, despite the fact that there's just a handful of them out there going back in whatever I'm talking about, which you'll explain to the audience in a minute. Why is that? Why are these cards nowhere near the demand of a world's championship, champion stamped card, etc.?
I think the main thing is just that they are cards from sets with a special stamp on it. It's not exclusive artwork. It's not an. I mean, thankfully, it's not an exclusive effect. We don't want that again. But it's not even that there's, an exclusive foil type or anything like that. It's very much just a card. It's the exact card that you can pull from a booster pack, and then it will have the small event logo in the corner, and then it will have the stamp, which could say, staff, top 8, or champion. And I think that the level of rarity compared to, I think the level of rarity puts it at a point where no one is going to want to sell it low enough that people would be saying, okay, yeah, I might as well get that. Because when you're at that, $1,000, $2,000 price range, which for the rarity of the card is totally fine, and it's not unreasonable for winners to say, I'm not selling it unless I get, 1 to 2,000 for it. But there are so many other cards you can buy in Pokemon for the 1 to 2,000 range, which, while they may not be anywhere near as rare, have something different or unique or special about them, where it can just be different artwork. Like, there's a lot of people will say, I could spend $1,000 on this card that there's hundreds of copies of, but it's this cool, unique artwork that I don't get on another card. Or I could spend $1,000 on this card where there's only 6 copies, but it's just the same artwork that I've got here next to it. I've got a 10-cent version. This one just has a slightly different logo. And I think that is just the main reason. And, because like you said, the Worlds ones, you do still see the Top Cut Worlds cards going for a lot more money. There's a lot more demand for them there because that artwork is exclusive to Worlds. It's tied to that event. Whereas with the ICs, it just isn't. it isn't kind of a thing there. And then even this Friends and Galar promo, even though people like the Professor Cup promos, they're gonna not care about the champion ones and stuff as much because it is again just a card from a set with a special stamp on it.
So this goes back to the fact, this relates to master set collecting to my
Yeah,
mind, because the folks that have reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm interested in your champion or top eight from one of these previous years, whatever they might be,"
yeah,
say an IC, then they're definitely telling me they're trying to complete master sets of something.
yeah.
So again, from our discussions, it would be few and far between in general on a relative basis that folks are actually still trying to complete master sets of most of these things.
Yeah, and I think the IC promos changed a lot of people trying to fully complete master sets. Because like we've talked about Sword and Shield and Sun and Moon with all the rainbow rares, stopping people collecting, the full sets, collecting what you can get out of booster packs. The idea of people, even if people weren't trying to collect the master sets, a lot of people are still interested in collecting, just all of the variants, even if they don't collect everything for a booster pack. Obviously, that wouldn't be a master set, but people still like the variants. But IC's changed that. Once we hit evolutions, you look at evolutions, and there are 4 cards in that master set which have 6 copies each. There's 4 champion cards. Suddenly, you go, oh, I'm never going to be able to complete that. Like, I've kept going with a lot of the variants and kept going with a lot of the sets, but I've always said now for the IC promos and stuff, I'm never going to have a master set, but I will consider my personal collection done if I have the player version and the staff version. There might be a couple of occasions where if I'm speaking to someone I know, I might end up with a top 8 or something. Just I think I have one IC top 8 just because it was someone selling one cheap while we were doing another deal. But I would say for my personal collection, I would only want or only be desperately trying to get player and staff, and then anything else is a bonus. I just know that I can't complete these master sets. One, because of just the price it would cost, and the availability of the cards. And I think that's the same for a lot of people, is that people are just knowing, oh, I can't complete all of the master sets. And if there are people out there doing it, they might focus on one master set where people might say, okay, I want to go for this one. I want to get this. I want the IC promos from this year. So I'll go for the champion stamped IC promos for this set and this set only. And that can be a much more manageable goal for people because there aren't new ones coming out. If you're chasing IC promos and you were trying to get the champion one for everything, there's 4 new ones a year. Just the amount of, what's the word I'm looking for? Disposable income you'd have to have, even just to keep up with that, not even looking at picking up what you've missed, is so far out of reach for most people. So if you are looking at those people who are focusing on one set, if people are broken up, even if people are going for master sets, instead of having everyone going for this thing, there's like 20% of the people are going for this one, 20% going for that one, 20% going for that one. So you don't have the demand for that specific card in the way that you do for other stuff. And then I'd say Worlds is completely different because even if there are people who don't touch Blackstar promos or anything at all, so many of those people want Worlds cards because Worlds cards just always feel really, really special going throughout the years.
Yeah, it's an interesting glass half empty versus glass half full type of argument, and
Yeah,
it sort of dovetails in with our discussion, even if we kind of joke about it, but it's not really a joke, especially in its really form mental illness, because I think when you get into this to this degree that I'm into it, there is some form of mental illness, and it's can be good or bad, but what's interesting is you're very glass half full. Hey, I reshape my goal to a manageable goal,
yeah.
and it's actually achievable. And I'm out there saying, how am I ever going to do this? Oh, it pains me that I can't figure out how it's ever going to be done because it may be impossible, et cetera, et cetera. But continue to try to, slither through the grass to find the next possible opportunity somewhere,
I
that I
mean,
never would have expected, trying to stay optimistic in the face of some very difficult realities when it comes to collecting at this higher level.
I mean, I think a huge amount of that is because of the, let's say, huge discrepancy in our own personal wealth. Because for me to be going after those champion cards, to get a card like a champion card or a trophy card from Worlds or something, you need two things. You need to have the money ready for it, and then you need to find it. You are at one out of the two. You have the money available for these cards, so it's just about tracking it down. I don't have that. So for you, and I think you've got the most difficult part done, really, is having the money with how expensive these cards are hitting. Because right now, I could probably track down a lot of these champion cards or a lot of these trophy cards or whatever. And I mean, I tracked down quite a few of them for you. But I could literally have someone sitting in front of me right now saying, "Here is this card, I want to sell it." And I know that I would have no way of obtaining that. Whereas for you, it is just we need to get that person in front of us. Once that person's sitting in front of us and they know they want to sell, I have the money. We can, you have the money. You can go from there. We can work it out. And I think that's why I just fully had to say I am accepting that this level of cards I'm never getting, because it's changed through the years as well. At first, it was always just, I got my one set of World's trophies, and I was like, okay, well, I know I'm never going to be getting every year of World's trophies. That's just not going to happen. And then it fell to with World's top cut cards, because back in the day, I picked up more World's top cut cards than I do now. And while I do have some runs and stuff, I've again said, okay, Worlds, I just want to get the players set and the staff set every year. I have the staff ones for every year. Players sets, I'm missing some of the older ones. But every year going forward, I at least want to get the players set and the staff card, because I know that the idea of finishing all the runs is not going to happen. And there's a Japanese set, the play promos. I'm only missing 6, but 2 of those are Espeon Star and Umbreon Star, which I'm sure people will know. I did a video on huge regrets in collecting where I didn't buy a pair of them for like $800 back in the day, because I was at Worlds and someone offered them to me, but that was all my spending money for the week. And now you'd be lucky to get a destroyed, like a bent in half destroyed copy of either of those for under 10-20,000. So I have to accept, okay, those are now gone. There's so much more throughout the years that I'm just having to go, okay, that's now gone. I have to reevaluate my collection, because if I was still going into it saying like, oh no, my goal is I want all these champion cards, I want all these trophy cards, it's never going to happen. I wouldn't be buying anything in Pokemon, because I'd always be holding out going, oh, I need to keep this money available in case one of these comes along. But accepting that I'm not going to be getting those has allowed me to put the money into other places and be working on and building my collection in other ways.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know a lot of this. The more money you spend, obviously, in my position, the less money you have, and at
Yeah,
my age, going to be 62 here and very soon, the disposable income really isn't as much as it once was in the higher earning years as well. But what's interesting to me, and I've actually done a video myself on this a long time ago, was my philosophy of not being afraid to spend a little bit of extra money when something is more rarely available presented to you as an opportunity, so
yeah,
that you don't look back someday and feel like you missed out, kind of like your story of the Umbreon, whatever you just said. So
yeah.
so not that I wasn't listening, but again, you said a couple of gold stars or V stars or whatever, and you said
They
800,
were
and then you said
Japanese cards. You don't care about
20,000,
them.
bent in half. Japanese don't care.
Yeah,
But the other thing is, I just think, maybe maybe Lamar or Pikachu, the couple of folks that are watching, they might actually find it interesting that I actually now will spend a little bit more money. In fact, in some degrees, quite a lot more money than I would have in years gone by. And you know this too,
yeah,
because of the obligation I feel to maintain the holistic nature of my collection. So what do I mean by that? Because no one's going to have a clue what I mean on most of the things I say. What I mean is, years ago, when I could buy those trophy cards for 5, 10, $15,000, 7,000, whatever they were, I was fortunate enough to just be collecting them. There was no value in them to me other than just building the collection. I wasn't buying for the resale value. I've pointed out many times I've not sold any cards from my own collection. But now we wake up and these cards can be 30, 40, 20, 30, 40, 50,000, whatever they might be. And normally I would say, why? If it's for investment, there's no chance. It's not a good investment necessarily to go spend 30 or 40 or 50 grand on one single trophy card, especially when I don't even care about the condition. I mean, obviously they're new, but I'm
Yeah,
not going to scrutinize it to whether or not 7, 8, 9, or a 6, just because it could have come that way from Pokemon and handing out to the winners. When it's that rarely available, we don't have the choice to do that, and we just buy as we need to buy. So the reason I don't punish myself for those extra dollars spent is because I think that having all of the cards in the whole nature of the entirety of the collection is what makes the collection so special. And I think, were it ever to needed to be sold or something, having it all to sell together, it's more valuable to somebody
yeah,
having those cards even at the rate that I spent, because between the money spent and between just the difficulties and the journeys to get the cards in and of themselves, as you say, being in the right spot when they're made available, that is quite a very big challenge.
yeah,
But
I
it
know.
does change my mentality a little bit here when sometimes somebody will come to me a champion card and I won't, they'll want 5,000 and I'm not going to sit there and haggle over 1,000 or something when when it's just what I need to pay to get it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and especially now because there are a lot more people in the hobby who have $5,000 today. When I first started back in 2010, when I first met you, you were legendary at Worlds because you were the guy who would show up with enough money to buy those trophy cards. And if people were trying to sell a trophy card, I mean, when I bought some of mine, I only paid 2,000, 3,000 for some of mine, and I did payment plans, and people were fully willing to accept payment plans on a couple of $1,000s for a card because they just knew that there were so few people would ever be willing to even spend 2,000 over a payment plan. Never mind have 2,000 like right now to spend. You
Yeah.
were you were basically not running up against anyone because a lot of your thing was okay. I am going to give you this money in cash right now. This isn't going to be I'm going to pay you $200 a month until it's paid off or whatever. But now, if you're at Worlds and someone offers you one of the cards you want, they say, "Oh, I say it's a stamped one," and say, "Oh, I want 5,000 for this." If you say no, there's 10 other people behind you who are also either holding $5,000 in cash or can bank transfer them $5,000 in cash right now. You're not the only person who can do that anymore. So I think it always does come down to now bidding wars and stuff. You are going to have to probably give yourself that edge of if the other people are looking at what is the realistic real value of that card, and if they are only wanting to get it for the actual value and they're considering future investments or price rise and stuff like that, the fact that you can then say, okay, this is for me, I don't want to be making a profit on this. The fact that you can then just say, okay, I will acknowledge that I am slightly overpaying for this card to get it, that is still a huge advantage to you.
Yeah, and I also am very clear, and most people, 99 out of 100 don't care, but I certainly acknowledge that when I buy something, it's going into a private collection and not
Yeah.
being bought for resale purposes. It is so, when you describe that example, I think 9 out of 10 folks standing in line to buy those cards are not buying them for a personal collection.
Oh,
And
definitely not. No.
yes, and even if they were, we talk about, a month later, 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, one need only look at eBay right now and punch in Pokemon World Championship trophy cards. And when you see the crazy prices for some folks that, are just out there to illustrate that they have them as well, are
Yeah.
indicative of folks putting them back on the markets. I think the only reasonable price, and it's not reasonable, but I understand it completely. There's one out there, I won't name the seller, but we love the seller, is what, $100,000, and then the other ones are 250, 270, some crazy numbers.
Yeah.
So again, it's interesting. This could be a good segue, but I'll leave it up to you. We could segue right into my acquisition of the 2022 World's #1 trophy card.
Yeah.
At this
Let's go
point,
straight into that one.
Okay, because it does have it's got so many different tangents that sort of
Yeah,
dovetail into what we're talking about.
it
So
is. That card has traveled. That card
yes,
has
that car has
racked up the air
traveled.
miles.
Yeah, and you'll have to help me remember some of that.
Yeah,
But before I get there, we obviously will set the stage. There was World Championships in August of 2022,
yep,
and they were held in the UK. You're familiar with that place. I think you might have been born there.
yep,
And you were hustling around as you do for me very often, which is very generous of you because this was the first Worlds that I hadn't been to since 2006 or something like
yeah.
that, give or take.
You. It was the first Worlds that I'd been to that you weren't there.
Okay, so notwithstanding all of the discussion about all of the other cards we were trying to track down, two, three,
Yeah,
four, everything else, we're going to stick to World's Trophy number one. And we made contact with the, I'm going to say TCG winner, who was located in uh, Czechoslovakia. Would you
yeah.
agree with that?
I think it's called the Czech Republic, but
The Czech Republic.
I
Okay.
don't think
Yeah.
it's been Czechoslovakia for about 30 years or something.
All right. So you see what I'm saying? Do you understand why people should watch? Because they help an old man who really is old and displays his age so prolifically and in this circumstance. Okay.
I mean, I'm
So
double checking that. I might be completely wrong.
no, you're never going to be wrong. So, anyways, he was from Czechoslovakia, aka the Czech Republic, and we attempt to contact, we make contact, and we start a dialogue with this individual uh, to try to acquire the card. Well, I'm going to make this story rather short because we're so far into this video already. And
Yeah,
what happened was relatively nice, talked about it, went back and forth. But unfortunately, I tried to involve some other people in the process that are great friends with me across this world. And so in involving them, they sort of, while you were doing your stuff in the venue, they were also
yeah,
talking about it, and some other folks got involved. And when those other folks got involved, under the guise of potentially helping me acquire the card, they did not do that. They came and said, "We are going to acquire the card for ourselves." And they basically jumped right in underneath everything and got involved with this seller, potential seller, in what I would call a bidding war.
yeah. It was a bidding
And,
war was going on that weekend for that card.
yes. And so to discuss the bidding war, and I'm be very open because maybe if I'm honest and somebody will actually tell a friend and they'll watch the video. So that card, we started talking about it, and the only variable in when we were bidding was they were potentially interested in not just the card, but the bag and a bunch of other merchandise and memorabilia that were awarded to that champion. And
Yeah,
I
you
was
got like
not. I was
a
just
hat with champion on it, and I think maybe a champion playmat. There's other stuff that says champion on it.
yes, and I was trying to simplify things for the person and say, look, I'll just worry about the card. That's it.
Yeah,
Long story short, the person who was very nice and very collaborative for a bit ended up saying at some point, you know what? They've offered me $55,000 for this card at this point. And so, David, you know, if you'd like to continue to bid, you're going to need to up the bid by $5,000 because we're in a high enough range now, David, that you need to start going by increments of 5,000 if you
yeah,
would like to have this card and the opportunity to own it. At which time I said, "Thank you very much. I'm going to pass because you may think you have, whatever it is, the holy grail, but if I'm in that situation, I'll take another thousand. I need another 5,000. I'll just let it go where it goes."
yeah,
And we were done. That was the end of that negotiation. Shortly thereafter, we picked up another negotiation, another discussion with the V. Is it VGC? Am I saying it right?
yeah.
VGC,
VGC Masters champion.
the VGC Masters champion, who happened to be located in Portugal. And by the way, I could tell you some days we'll talk about this, the offshoots. I mean, I found out through dealing with the Czech Republic situation that my cousin's son was marrying a Czech Republic girl. And I was trying to and he was flying there to deal with her family. I mean, I had considered every possible option, all kinds of crazy
Trying to
stuff.
get him to just pick it up while he was there
Yes,
or something.
flying there,
Yeah,
coming here, coming in between. But all that set aside, so now we're dealing with Portugal. And then, and that gentleman's name was Eduardo,
yeah,
because I've been authorized to say those names. And another gentleman who was a friend of his you were working with and discussing was named Ruben.
yeah.
And
Ruben was really really helpful this year. Ruben, like we could not have got what we got this year without Ruben.
yeah,
Ruben
Ruben has been
really,
absolutely unbelievable. And it ended up that he was a great friend of Eduardo's. And
yeah,
Ruben is in Spain.
yeah,
So Portugal was the winner. Ruben's in Spain. We're discussing back and forth. We talked about it for months. I looked back at the chains August, September, October, and finally trying to figure out the best way to get it. So finally, Eduardo said, "Sure, David. I appreciate it. It's going to you. I like that it's not being resold. Let's work on how to get it to you." And Dan, why don't you pick it up from there? How did we get it from Portugal to Spain or wherever else we did?
Well, what is also important to remember is this card was likely printed in the US. This was likely one of the cards that is printed at Pokemon's home facility in Seattle rather than with the trophy cards. I doubt they'd outsource them. I think they make sure they have a good eye on them. So this started somewhere in a printing facility in the US, got
Yep.
to Pokemon in Seattle, then went to London to be given out, and that's before it then goes to Portugal. And then so Ruben picks it up and takes it back to Spain, I believe, or Ruben met the winner
No, no,
at.
he did. He did.
He
He
picked it up
went to
from Portugal.
Portugal and he took
Okay,
it back to Spain. Yes.
yeah, which sounds like a lot, but they're right next to each other. Americans are
Yes.
like, wow, they went to another country, and it's like, yeah, they drove 20 minutes probably. It's right there. But yeah, so
I hate when you do the geography stuff. I'm still stuck
yeah,
on Czech Republic and Czechoslovakia.
yeah.
Okay.
I did
So
check that,
what
and 1992 was when it stopped being referred to as Czechoslovakia.
see, you know
So
what? I think that might have been when when that Great Wall of Berlin or something fell or something. So I'm
that
not sure.
was 89, I think, fell and was nothing to do with Czechoslovakia.
Fine. You know what? I
Yeah.
don't even know the Pokemon cards, and you're gonna
Oh,
force me in a geography lesson. I'm so see. This is the reason I don't want to do these once a week for you. Maybe once a month.
yeah.
Okay. Wait a minute. So finish the story. People are falling
Finish the
asleep.
story.
So
Yeah, finish the story. No one wants to hear
he
about the
has it
Berlin
in
Wall.
Spain now.
He has it in Spain. So then I'm talking to Ruben about how I'm going to get it from Ruben or how Ruben's going to get it to you. And eventually we realize that both me and Ruben are going to a regionals in Toronto. I'm
Canada.
traveling Toronto, Canada. Yep, because I'm traveling up there because Laura's working it that weekend, and I have a friend who lives in Toronto, so we're just going to go and stay with her for a couple of days, spend a weekend up there for the event. So we were just driving up, and Ruben is going up there to work the event. He's on staff as well. So we end up arranging to meet at Toronto Regionals to then pick the card up. So the card has now gone Seattle to London to Portugal to Spain to Canada. I then drive the card, obviously, back down to Ohio, where I live, and then finally comes to stay at your place a couple of months ago, as people have seen the video that I did when I showed off a lot of your collection in your house. I flew over to stay with you for a couple of days, and mainly to bring you that card over. So the card ended like one state away from where it finished. Does Nevada border Washington, or is there another state in between?
Yeah,
I don't know
because
why I'm asking.
I'm the
You
one
don't
you're
know?
going to ask the question to. Okay,
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
not even going to try to answer.
Nevada is kind of close to Washington, at least, but the card bounced around. What was it, like 4, 5 different countries, and a lot traveled fully across the US as well, basically, to end up very, very close to where it started.
Yeah, I mean, such a wonderful story. So proud to own that card. So happy to own that card. And interestingly, as you and I know, over the years, typically when we buy a or come across someone who's willing to sell a world's number one trophy, they get that stamped run alongside of it, like
Yeah,
champion and semifinalist and finalist, all those different cards.
yeah,
But in this particular instance, whether or not he did or didn't have those cards or did or did not want to make them available, I don't really remember.
yeah,
But I know that the only card I also obtained, I believe at the same time, was the champion
yeah.
stamped
Just the
card.
champion stamped one.
Yeah, so I had to rely on my acquisition of the number two World's Trophy card
Yeah,
to end up including the rest of that run, which
yeah,
was, of course, finalist, semifinalist, quarterfinalist, etc.,
yeah,
to ultimately complete the collection, at least of the stamped cards from Worlds as well for 2022.
yeah. I mean, luckily, with the number two trainer I got while I was still in London. The end of Worlds, as we were leaving Worlds on the Sunday, we had none, which is I think that may have been affected somewhat by you not being there in person, but we've never had that before where we had absolutely nothing in hand. But luckily, Ruben again was middlemanning with it was the VGC second place masters we ended up buying it from. I think he knew in advance he was wanting to sell it. You just hadn't arranged a deal yet because he left it in London with another friend who lived there. And luckily, I was staying in London for like a week or so afterwards to spend some time with my family. So me and Laura ended up just meeting the friend of the number two winner to pick up the number two trainer plus the finalist down to top 32, which of course then meant when you were negotiating for the number one, you knew you only had to secure the number one and the champion. And I think the VGC also got it where they get two of their place and one of the lowers. So if you were negotiating for one champion, it meant that he was still hanging on to a full run of 32 to champion, as opposed to if you'd been needing to buy the whole run, he'd have just been left with one champion. So
Right. You know, it's both it's stupidly interesting. Let me just say
yeah,
that as you talk and as I listen to the fact that you know so much more about what it is I've acquired, how I've acquired it, when I've acquired it, and this goes back for 15 years or however long,
yeah,
that that I would have to imagine at this point in time, I am the most naive, unknowledgeable, I don't think that's a word, but we did it from the first podcast,
yeah.
collector of almost any high level collection in almost any hobby, if not every hobby in the world. Would you not agree with that? Is there not an argument to be made that I know less about what I have in my binders and collection than almost anybody would have of a similar caliber collection out there?
Up to 2019, I would have agreed with you, but during the pandemic, there were a lot of people throwing a lot of money at stuff they didn't know about.
But do you think it was actually for collecting purposes or was it just
I
trying
don't
to?
know. I think people were just throwing money at stuff. People
Okay.
people were bored. It was like, oh, I can't. It was I can't go to the casino and put 10 grand on black right now, so I'm just gonna go on eBay and put 10 grand on whatever this is.
Yeah.
I suppose,
God, too.
yeah, I suppose maybe as a true complete collector, potentially you know less about your own stuff than you about others. But hey, I just live vicariously through you. Like I said, I can't afford a lot of these cards, so for me, it's like it's knowing that this collection is getting built is a reward in itself. You know, I can't build the collection for myself, but if I'm helping make sure there is as close as we can get to a fully complete collection, you know, knowing that one copy of those cards is always saved, it's known about, we know where it is. It always feels good, and I'm always happy. You know, I feel a sense of like achievement and stuff too whenever we tick off one of those big cards that you're missing, or we get something like that.
And I so appreciate that, Dan. I really do. I can't thank you enough for your kindness and doing this with me for all these years. I know that's your feeling. It means a huge amount to me, and it's so ironic that I was actually just talking to Ruben this morning, and
Yeah,
he actually said the same thing, which was such a meaningful thing. And he said, David, there's all these different cards that I wish I'd have bought so long ago for my particular collection, and they're not necessarily anything to do with what I'm collecting. They could be Japanese, they could be whatever. And
yeah,
he said, not having the money and all of that stuff right now because things have escalated so rapidly, but helping you do some of these things makes me feel good. And I've always felt that. I know it sounds corny, but everyone that knows me and about this hobby knows that I've always felt an obligation to continue to fill this collection. And
yeah,
it's been straining, it's been marriage draining. But I've done it to the best of my ability. It's not a perfect science. I'm starting to realize I'm not going to own every card down. There's just going to be too many different kinds.
yeah. This
But
last
I
couple of
certainly,
years,
yeah, the last couple of
there are a
years have
couple.
become very tough. But even now I'll sit in. I mean, I've been sitting in bed this week, and I've been starting to go backwards on the Black Star promos. I bought the first ones for the Scarlet and Violet up to what 13, 14, 15, wherever they are. I
Yeah,
started going backwards to the last 20 in the one series before it, so that I can sort of meet myself wherever I left off. So even those little cards that to most people don't mean a hill of beans, filling in those blanks, filling in the holes. I had 4 or 5 jumbo cards in, as most of you guys know. I collect every single jumbo card that's ever
yeah,
been put out. So I keep sort of going along the pathway, and it's just nice when I can spend $16 and get 10 cards.
yeah.
Then when I'm then spending 16 on something else isn't even a viable possibility. So
Yeah, I mean that you having that collection is the reason that we can feel the sense of accomplishment getting you those cards is because we wouldn't feel anything if it was like, oh, we helped this person get a card and then next week they've sold it for a profit. It
right.
doesn't feel like that. It's But for you, it's like, okay, the collection is growing. We know that this is being appreciated. That's why we're able to live vicariously.
And the other thing too is, so many people equate the appreciation of anything in your collection, individual cards, the collection as itself, based on grading. And of course, my propensity not to grade, if nothing
Yeah,
more than for display and bulk purposes, too much storage, is indicative of me not necessarily worrying about value at this point either.
yeah, yeah,
I've just been a completionist and kind of stuck with that. All right, I know we're getting. I've become the room monitor now, so I'm going to give us a hall pass to move on,
yeah. We
because
have
I know we wanted to talk briefly about the tropical mega battle
yes,
set that's
another
that's
set has come up
out
for sale.
there. Yeah, and so I'll let you give the introduction. I'm going to set the backdrop for what I want you to discuss at some point once you talk about that it being out there,
Okay,
and that is, why does something like this get so many views and we don't? Okay, so that's going to be the question when you're all said and done. And because I certainly have the same cards, I certainly could display the same cards with you here. The cards that I have are actually maybe the only set I've never said this to you before, Dan. I don't know if you realize this or not. They may be the only set of Tropical Mega Battle cards that have never been played. Now, they're not sealed, but they're virtually tens. So they've not even been played. So my question is, what is it that we're not doing, need to be doing to try to garner views when someone like Mindy, who's just out there, tells her story and whatever, has 5, 6, 7, 800,000 views and whatever. Okay, tell us the story about what's out there.
okay. First of all, I am gonna debate you on the fact that you said they've never been played.
Never this the I have a backstory on them. They virtually untouched, not even played. They were handed to the guy, and somehow there was an extra deck apparently that he didn't play, or he wasn't up for it, or he got sick. But I
Okay,
specifically understand them to because the condition is like untouched.
so he was handed them and then dropped from the tournament.
That's some, yeah. Again,
Okay,
my mind isn't all perfect, but it was
yeah.
very much something like that. Yes.
Well, I shall say to people, the reason I debated that fact is that the only way the English Tropical Mega Battle cards came out were at two tournaments, at the Tropical Mega Battle tournaments. You
Yeah.
were given this stack of 30 cards, and you had to build some sort of a deck. You either had to play it as was, or you had to build some sort of a deck out of it, and you played against other people who had the same pool of cards. So really, it should seem that every single copy should have gone through at least 3 rounds of play. But I guess if you say if the guy was sick, if he got the cards and didn't actually play. So anyway, moving on to a few other things. Let's first start off with what it is, why we're talking about this. So a set has popped up on Verbank for sale now on Twitter and everything too. And the owner of it, what's her surname? So her name is Mindy Meldum. David was saying I didn't remember her name. That is her married name, I believe. Her maiden name was Mindy Lampke, I think is how you pronounce it. She actually won the 2002 World Championships at age 10, which is what qualified her for the Tropical Mega Battle in 2002, which is where she got this set of cards. People are probably saying, wait, wasn't the first World Championship in 2004? No, Wizards of the Coast actually ran one World Championship in 2002, and what happened at that tournament, it's pretty indicative of why Wizards lost the license, because this was during the time where Wizards of the Coast had removed the age 15 and up division from Pokemon. So they had the 10 and under division and they had the 11 to 14 division. And then on top of that, they had a tournament for the Pokemon professors, but it wasn't classed as the World Championship, and it didn't qualify the winner for this Tropical Mega Battle or anything like that. And that is a big reason why Wizards lost the license, is because they were trying to drive older Pokemon players out of Pokemon and into Magic. But that's just a bit of a backstory. So yeah, so Mindy obviously won this in the 10 and under division, qualified for the Tropical Mega Battle, and got to play, and has had this full set of Tropical Mega Battle cards, the full deck, since then. And I'm guessing something to do with the sale that happened a month or two ago. In fact, not even a month or two ago, just a few weeks ago on Heritage, showed the value of it. Maybe now she's decided it is time to sell, so has posted those up for sale. Worth noting that because Mindy's are from the 2002 Tropical Mega Battle, her set has the corrected Claire's Mantine. The one that went up on Heritage was from the 2001, which had the error Claire's Mantine. It has the wrong resistance on the English copies of the Claire's Mantine from 2001.
Is one of and remind me, I know you said this in a previous video, but just to catch us up, is one of those two Mantines more rare than the other?
I don't believe so. I believe it was the same number of English language players were at both events. It's
Okay.
hard to fully get, lists of players from tournaments in 2001, 2002, but I believe it was the same number of players.
Okay.
So yeah, she has that one. She's put up for sale. I don't know how many views she actually got. Let me just pull up her YouTube real quick.
I couldn't find the YouTube again, but at one point I had glanced at it and it was somewhere approaching 500. And of course, she has a tremendous story behind it. And I've spoken to her and I said, congratulations. We talked about valuations. We talked about the heritage. We talked about the conditions of her cards, the grading. Her cards are not graded. We also, again, I've tried to make it clear, and I'd like to say this to anybody that might still be watching. If you guys have ever questions about valuation and stuff, what you think you should sell something for, anything like that, please feel free to give me a shout. I'm glad to help you without ever being involved. I certainly had people contact me, some great, fantastic people contacted me and said, David, you might be interested in this. You'd like to know about rare things, and we don't have necessarily the interest in collecting them or the budget or whatever. But she'd had some very strong offers, and I was really trying to encourage her to go in that direction because you can't necessarily, just because something sold at 175,000 at auction, there's a buyer's premium. There were grading, they were better condition, et cetera, et cetera. So I was trying to help her along the way, and that's when I was looking at her videos, engaging the
Yeah.
views. What do you see, Dan?
Well, so her video currently is at 737 views,
Yes.
and yep,
And
our
Dan, let me just cut you off.
okay,
737 views. If we took every video we've made of this series with you and I,
yeah.
maybe 725 or so, Dan. So, what's going on? Talk to me.
Honestly, I think it's because one, it is a great story she's got. It's the fact she
Yes.
has this connection to these cards, and it is a player from years back showing up, and it is the first time a lot of people have seen these cards because the cards were posted in Burbank City Pokemart. And I don't know if people use Facebook will know there's Burbank City, which is where discussion of Pokemon and stuff takes place. Burbank City Pokemart is where sales and stuff take place. And I think there are a lot of people unique to one of the two groups. So I think a lot of people in the sales group may never have seen these cards before because they may never have seen the videos and stuff discussing them. They don't keep track of stuff that isn't actually going up for sale. And they would have only seen it for the first time, when Heritage dropped theirs and then suddenly there's another one. Also, it got a lot of comments in the Verbank groups. And I think she may have then posted the video in regular Verbank. I'm not totally sure. And we've talked about that love it or hate it evil beast that is the algorithm. Now, the Facebook algorithm, if there are 30,000 people in Verbank, which there are, it's not going to show the post with a video to everyone. when you first post it. Not everyone is going to see it. It just shows people who are looking at the group who are on Facebook at a certain time right when it's posted. If the video gets a comment or the post gets a comment, it shows up in people's feeds again, it gets bumped. Some of my most viewed videos are videos that I didn't think were anywhere near my best, but they're ones where they've got a lot of traction and a lot of comments and stuff in Verbank, and it's just kept them at the top of Verbank. Like when I was doing some of my pre-release kit videos, you had people arguing with me who didn't know what they were talking about the fact that I had these pre-release kits from the time when tournaments weren't running. I worked out with a local store. I bought a lot. I opened a lot on release day, and there were people just throwing accusations that I was stealing and that I was ruining children's lives or whatever. It was completely, it was unbelievably degenerate behavior. It was just people who had no clue what they were saying and were just trying to wind me up and were throwing around ridiculous accusations, but it kept the post at the top of Verbank for like 12 hours. And because of that, the views for that video went through the roof because people aren't seeing that video and going, oh, I better read the comments and see what's happening here. They just see the video and they click on it. But the comments are letting more people see those Facebook posts. That's why we talk about the algorithm and why it's important to, share and comment and stuff. So I think that is part of why Mindy has been able to get a decent chunk of views on this first video. But also, I say it is a very good video. It's sharing a lot of information. It's a first-hand perspective of these tournaments. You're talking to an original tournament winner. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it. But we'll get there. We will get there.
Okay, because so this is where we need folks to comment. So here's my I know right now Lamar, his wife, and Peak Dechu are still watching. So we've got three of them.
Yeah, we do.
So and no, and our appreciation to everybody else that actually is. I actually know several people that watch all the way through, and we thank you very much. So
yeah, we have a decent percentage of people watch all the way through.
yeah, which is kind and crazy, but kind while being crazy. So here's the thing: comment on what we should do videos on. Do you want to see content? Do you actually want to see more collection type stuff? Would you like me to hire an actor? I can hire a young actor, for example, and he can simulate being someone from 2002, and we can simulate that he won the world championships, and I can have the cards shown, and I can have him like doing just what Mindy's doing, which is fantastic. She's now indoctrinating her young daughter to the game, which is so neat. One generation shall laud they works to another, some kind of biblical verse. I'm not religious. What do we do? Do we do that? Is there a more controversial thing we should be talking about? So, like Dan said, we can get the trolls and other. I won't say the word degenerates, but the whatever Dan said, the
Yeah.
people that really are not very reasonable in their perspective, the ones on the outside of black and white, right in the middle of gray. It would not be that way. I think they'd be right on the tangents of black and white all the way to the extremes. So, do we find those folks and we just start revving them up by saying we think Pokemon is at its end point and the hobby is done and that's it? Like, what should we talk about? Please tell us. Give us a comment. Help the algorithm, and I am certainly willing to do it. It's not for me because, as you guys know from the beginning of all of our videos, my time on Earth is quite limited at this point. But it's definitely for Dan. And Dan with his lung stories, it's not fake. They removed a part of his lung. But you see,
They
let me
did.
tell you about my lungs, Dan, because you may not understand this. I went to Stanford Hospital in California, the number one lung specialist hospital. And the guy said, "Do you understand your lungs do not work?" And I said, "Why?" And he says, "Because there's scars all over them." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" He goes, "I don't know why it happened. Could have happened because your mom was a smoker, could be secondhand smoke. Don't have a reason." Whenever I tell that story, my mom wants to kill me because she doesn't like when I blame her. But the reality is, he said, you can't fix lungs. There's nothing you can do. You could take inhalers and puffers and on a daily basis try to do whatever you need to do. So, Dan, we really are in this together, okay? You
Yeah.
might be the world champion back in 2002. I might be able to say it's you and show some of these sets. And if it's going to get us views, let's do it, because I think our fodder alongside the pictures is fun. It's fun.
When you first mentioned hiring actors, I really thought you were about to say that we should just hire two really attractive people to sit on camera and then just put our voices over the top of it.
Yeah, see,
So
I
that
think more of that
people
is like one of
who,
those imaging things where we just take our heads off our bodies and maybe put more attractive pictures on. So,
yeah,
an
maybe
idea.
that'll work.
I'd consider anything at this point, you know.
I do think we should at least shout out Mindy's video, though. It is a good video. Her channel is Miss Mindy 2337. I will link her video in the description too, because, like I say, it is worth a watch. It's a very good, interesting video. And if you're interested in buying the English versus set, you can contact her through her video, through her Twitter, whatever it is.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
think it's
and
important. What's really important about that, so not even so much as the video or anything, is it's really cool that someone from that time frame held on to the number two,
yeah,
held on to the cards. It's been amazing to me how many of these youngsters, this is one of the card sets that's most limited and yet has appeared over and over again this last year. And
yeah,
over and over again only means to a quantity of 12 or whatever is out there, or maybe six, but my point is there's still a very limited quantity
yeah,
out there.
yeah,
But it's so neat to honor the history of the hobby, to see her have that success, to know that she put the cards away, and know that after all these years, the popularity of the hobby is going to end up providing her with some very incredible, monetizing opportunities that she's going to be able to
yeah.
parlay into future success for her and her family. So that's really cool.
I do think as well she held the title of being the only female world champion for 18 years. She won in 2002, and I think it was 2010 before there was another female world champion. 2010 Worlds in the juniors division.
Wait, you said 18 years. Did you mean 8 years?
Did I say 18? Yes, I meant 8.
Yes. Because I was thinking when you said that, I was forgetting the younger ones because I was thinking of who I bought the card from, the German girl.
Yeah, Kaya from in like 2018 or something. Yeah,
Yes.
I
So when
meant
you
I
said
meant 8.
when you said 18, I thought you were going in that direction. So
Yeah, I don't know why I said 18.
okay.
She held it for 8 years, up until
Yes.
2010.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
And let's just take a minute to feel sorry for a very good player who had some success later, Alex Brosseau, Big Chucko won, who won the Professor tournament at the 2002 World Championship and got bugger all for it. Did not get invited to the Tropical Mega Battle. Did not get anywhere near the prizes that the others did because Watsy was trying to kill the game.
Wow.
It's,
Because he was in that older division to
he
where there
was
was
in
not any
he
focus
was
or
in that
emphasis.
older division, yep, and they were trying to make the players in that older division move to Magic, so they only let them be professors. They didn't let them play in real tournaments.
Wow. That's amazing. There, you know what? It's nice to know there are still some things you know. And I love when you share that knowledge. So very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
All right, we are running pretty long this episode, so last quick thing to mention is about missing staff promos. So, as people will know, there were 7 sets of cards that had pre-release promos that didn't have staff versions because they stopped them during the pandemic. They ran them up until Vivid Voltage, and then from Battle Styles through Lost Origin, they didn't do staff promos, and then Silver Tempest started them up again. Couple of months ago, a few of these started showing up in Australia, having been purchased allegedly from a UK store. And from speaking to people, I spoke to the right people, and it seems like those were stolen promos. Those were ones that appeared a couple of months ago. It now seems that stores are starting to legitimately receive the missing staff promos from Pokemon. Some European stores have started receiving, I think, 4 out of the 7 sets they've got packs of staff promos for. So it seems like we're getting them in waves, and the rest of the world should be getting them pretty soon. Within the next couple of weeks, we should hopefully know a bit more about those. But, stores have shown that they've had the packaging information from Pokemon and stuff to say that these ones were sent out by Pokemon. But still, one thing that needs to be said to remember with that, these cards are not being sent to stores for them to sell. These are not the store's cards when the store gets them. These are cards that are supposed to be given to the judges that would have ran your pre-release tournaments. That has always been communicated from Pokemon. These staff promos are always to be handed to the judges. These are not for the stores to sell directly. So if you see a store who gets theirs and clearly just immediately sells them, don't support that because that's not what they should be doing. A store is allowed to buy them from the judges and then they're allowed to put them in their singles case. The judges themselves are allowed to sell them, but the store is not allowed to just sell them straight off the bat for their own gain. always needs to be remembered with that, because judges are a huge, huge part of Pokemon tournaments. They're a huge part of Pokemon tournaments being able to happen, these tournaments still being able to go forward. So the judges need to be supported. The judges should be receiving what is rightfully theirs, and the Pokemon Company have made it clear that those promos are for the judges. And if we get them in at our league stores, they will all be distributed to the judges. We're going to make sure none of the stores in our area are just selling them. And if they do, they'll be reported. Never be afraid to report the stores to Pokemon if you see them doing something like this. Same goes for if you see them selling staff promos for a new set, before the pre-releases have even happened. Get the screenshots of them doing it. If you can find out what store they're from, great. Report them to Pokemon, because we need to get those people out of the hobby. We need to make sure the stores who are doing it properly are the ones who are being supported by Pokemon and who get to run these tournaments.
Wow, I can see with that kind of rant and rave, you've got one heck of a political future, buddy. If it's not in the politics in general, it's going to be for Pokemon. I understand what you're saying. Can you just tell the world and me, why are they distributing these now? Why did they not come out? Where have they been? And why these years later, or this many months later, are these now coming out?
Well, they stopped releasing them because the stores were selling them. So the last pre-release tournaments that were actually held before the pandemic, it was either Sword and Shield or Rebel Clash. I don't remember if Rebel Clash actually got its pre-release tournaments. But then the next set after that was Darkness Ablaze. Fine, the promos went out. They were given to the judges pretty much worldwide, as they were supposed to be. Pokemon, again, as I said, made it very, very clear they had to be given for the judges. I was working at a store at the time, and obviously my wife runs our local stores. She runs our local stores league. I saw both sides of it. I had all the communication. And then Vivid Voltage came out, same thing. Please give these to your judges. The difference was Vivid Voltage had a staff Charizard in it. And so stores got them and were told, please give these to your judges. And stores said, no, we're going to sell these because these are now worth a lot of money because this is a Charizard. And so many stores just went ahead and sold them rather than giving them to the judges that Pokemon decided that they couldn't be trusted and didn't give them out anymore. And then when Silver Tempest came out, because they were back to actually running pre-releases, so if you wanted to run your tournament, you had to be paying your judges. So now that Pokemon requires you to report how many people play in your pre-release events, you couldn't just fudge the numbers. And if judges weren't getting their staff promos, they would simply say, okay, I am not judging this tournament for you. So with the ones going forward, it was easy enough to, there's always going to be stores who are not going to do it properly, but a lot of the problem was solved by the fact that stores now had to report their pre-release numbers and that they couldn't just take them out and sell them without their judges kicking up a fuss. And then now it seems because of, I think the fact that some of those stolen ones got out and were being sold, and the fact that some were out there was a bit of a kick in the pants for Pokemon to say, okay, we're going to do something to make sure there are legitimate copies out there. You don't want the thieves being the only ones making money from these. You don't want the fact that these are now would be super rare cards if only 3 or 4 copies of each got out, and there'd be people paying hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for them. And the only people benefiting from those are thieves. So you want to make sure that your judges are getting what they should have had all along. And like I say, which they would have had if stores hadn't just decided to sell what they had no right to sell. The judges would have kept getting these for every set. They never would have stopped.
Yeah. So it's a kind of a combination of the pandemic along with the greed factor, the fact that there weren't
Yeah.
the pre-releases going on in person or whatever at that point for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it all came down to that, to the set with the Charizard in it. That's when more stores just turned on the heel and said, okay, well, no, you're not having these.
Got it. Okay. Good.
But yeah,
Good
I think
information.
if those stolen ones hadn't come out, if there were just no copies on the market, then maybe we wouldn't see Pokemon doing this release now where they're sending them out. But I think the fact that some are out there, and there are grading companies grading them, so there are now, I know at least CGC graded a couple of staff promos like a month plus ago before this official release. So the fact that it's out there, Pokemon don't want it being the only copies of cards out there are stolen, so they would rather send out all the ones that should have been sent out and make it so that they're not making the money, or the thieves aren't.
All right. So I know we got to finish, but I'm going to ask you one last question. What do you think about CGC? So you're saying CGC graded some of those copies that clearly had to have been stolen because there were no other ones legally issued. So just your thoughts on that real quickly.
Well, so I think you hit into a very, very odd situation when you talk about grading potentially stolen cards, because in the past, people have said CGC have graded stolen cards when it was cards that were early released. They've graded some Charizards and stuff that people trace back and found out some Charizards, I think from Champions Path or something, were potentially stolen from a printing place, and CGC graded some of those. But there are cards that are legitimately released early. I know there was a case where I think it was around Vivid Voltage. Someone got French McDonald's promos in their Vivid Voltage packs, and the McDonald's set hadn't come out for was not going to come out for months. And I know CGC graded those, and they gave it a special label saying early release. They said the same with the Charizards, and I know if people watch my videos on the channel, one of my most popular videos last year was I found Lost Origin packs at my local Target 6 weeks before the set came out. Now, if I could have graded those cards and probably got an early release label on it. So I think you either have to, as a grading company, you either have to say, we will not grade anything early released at all, or we will grade anything early released. And to be honest, these staff promos don't even fall under early release because it's a staff variant. The actual pre-release promos were released. The staff promos should have already been released. So it's you either have to take the line of you are expecting these grading companies to follow the history of every card that they grade, or you just have to accept that a couple of illegitimately obtained items are going to get through when they're grading stuff like this, because it's not unreasonable to think that not every employee at CGC is going to know that those staff promos never had a release, because if they wouldn't have been sent through ultra high trophy card level. So if they just get some, they get some staff promos through from Lost Origin, which never came out, and then you have staff promos from Silver Tempest, the next set, which did come out. If you're not a Pokemon collector, and honestly, even if you're just a casual Pokemon collector, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Like if I show a new collector a staff from Silver Tempest, I forget which ones the Silver Tempest ones were, and then show them the staff Koffee from Lost Origin and say, what's the difference between these? They're not going to know. You would have to really know the history of when that stopped. And grading companies can't teach every single employee every single thing about Pokemon. I also believe that Pokemon is kind of okay. Like the Pokemon company is sort of okay with cards like that getting graded because it's creating a paper trail. I think that once these cards go through CGC, you can say, okay, we know that these stolen promos went through CGC on this date. We know that we can find out from CGC if we need to that this person submitted it, and you can start following the paper trail back if Pokemon ever decide to go down the route of finding out who actually stole those promos. It's not an ideal scenario, but I think the only other thing is grading companies don't touch anything that's an early release and would have to do a lot more training for people to know what was not early released. I don't like that the stolen ones got graded and that people potentially made money from it, but I think it's kind of a no-win situation all around.
Couldn't you have a Pokemon specialist? Couldn't you categorize enough of the cards such that like every card that comes in with staff or something because it's unique and it's stamped, is going to go through somebody from a Pokemon specialist perspective in the initial stages before it's ever graded in a company like that, CGC, just to try to to make things more legitimate. So the idea being that we're grading so many Pokemon cards at this point, and we want to have a great reputation in doing it, and we don't want a lot of stuff to come in that shouldn't be. Isn't it good? Wouldn't it be worth having the expense of a single person who's got that supervisorial role in evaluating cards coming in?
I mean, I guess if you had just one person doing it, you would need like a huge team to deal with the amount of stuff coming through, and at that point they basically have to remove their bulk pricing because of how much extra time and effort it would go into. So, and then you'd lose a lot of customers if because a lot of customers will submit just because of the bulk grading level, like the lowest priced one, and I don't think that would be sustainable if you were then having to have the extra people on staff and have the extra time that it was taking. And people don't like the extra turnaround time, even if it just adds an extra couple of days, because people need to go into it and look through stuff like that. I don't think people would like it too much. I think people say, oh, in theory I want this, and then wouldn't pay for it or wait for it if it happened. Obviously ideal world is that every grading company can have experts in. I just think realistically I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good discussion. Thank you.
All right. Well, this has been a long one today, so I think we are probably at the end. I think we've touched on everything we wanted to touch on today. Do you have anything else you wanted to bring up before we
I just want to
close?
say, I think you're going to mention something about the comments, maybe, but the other
Yeah.
thing is, yeah. So I do want to say that related to my comment on the comments is, please let Laura know if she continues to make them so very long that the entirety of the next video may just be reading her comments. Okay. So
I
just,
will let her know.
fade back to black a little bit and we'll take it from there. Okay.
But she still definitely needs to leave a comment for the
She
algorithm.
needs to comment for sure. Yeah. I'm trying to find strangers. I tried to go down with the iPad down to, some strangers, down on Fremont Street here in Vegas.
Yeah.
And they looked at me like I was crazy. They were rather looking at the girls on the strip or putting the snakes around their shoulders and taking pictures. So yeah, but any comments are good.
Yeah. We need to get a QR code set up. This week was my plan to actually make a playlist of just these videos. So what we'll do is we'll set a QR code up for the playlist, and we can print those out, and you can just go and stick them all around Las Vegas.
Oh, I like that.
You go and stand in front of one of the casinos, just handing out QR codes so that people
QR code cards. I like that.
QR code cards to
Yes.
view this series.
Yeah.
So the other thing I was going to mention about comments. So next weekend during our regular filming time, I'm going to be away in Virginia for a wedding. So our plan is, some point later this week, me and David are going to film another episode to fill in the gap for when I'm away. What we're planning to do is do the episode which a lot of people have requested, which is going to be David's history with collecting. We're going to talk about how he started collecting anything, get into his Pokemon, go through all of that kind of stuff. But because we're filming that in the next day or two, the comments from this video and from that video will both be read out in 2 weeks' time. So if people are wondering why there's no comments and stuff on next week's video, that's it. So you've got 2 weeks to leave your comments on this video and the next one before we read them all out. And hopefully in those 2 weeks we'll know a bit more about these staff promos and other things.
Makes sense. And hopefully someone's still listening to you right now and actually knows what's going to happen with the comments. So great.
Hopefully, yeah. We'll probably mention it in next week's one as well, the special episode.
Good. That's a good idea. At the beginning.
At the beginning, yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully people are looking forward to that special episode, because a lot of people have requested that one.
Okay.
But yeah, we're running at like 90 minutes recording time now, and I don't even know if there's going to be that much taken out. So this has been a bumper long episode. Hopefully people still enjoyed the discussions, and that's going to be it from us. We will see you next week, and then the week after, and whatever.
Okay. Bye-bye, guys.
I would like to say a huge thank you to everyone who chooses to support me on Patreon. If you'd like to get involved, help support the channel, and see some behind-the-scenes content, click on the link in the description. Thanks again.
Thanks for watching. Check out some more videos right here.
And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome Pokemon content from DJ Gigabyte.
Gotta catch 'em all!